can't believe they buffed my favorite skill, Arc, the Chain Lightning of Path of Exile 2, which is already powerful pre-patch, zapping your enemies into pieces with the Orb of Storms, and now, after the patch, it gets such a huge power increase. Number 1, Arc is now a projectile. Currently, we get Arc as a spell, AoE, lightning, chaining, and payoff, while Spark, for example, is a projectile skill. And Arc, being a projectile, opens up tons of new support gems. This is right now what happens when I type in projectile on Arc, only 2 chaining skills. But if I go over for Spark, these would be all the crazy options available. My favorite one being Scattershot. Sure, you do less damage, but we get 2 additional projectiles. And since Arc is a chain lightning skill, that's going to chain 6 to 9 times instead of 5 to 8 times. And then you shoot out 3 projectiles instead of 1. That's 27 chains going around hitting enemies, completely zapping everything into pieces. And since it's a projectile now, you can also play things like 12% chance for spell skills to fire 2 additional projectiles, and quite a lot of them. Or if you wanted to follow the popular Deadeye route, you could also just add 1 bonus projectile and simply double your damage. That's not the only thing that changed though, because it now does 50% more shock magnitude, another good multiplier, and it can consume lightning infusions to chain additional times and deal more damage. Infusions are a new mechanic in the Third Edict. There are skills that can make infusions and skills that can consume infusions for the bonus damage. And in our case, we have the Orb of Storms that we're using anyways. You've seen it in the gameplay. Summon to Orb of Storms and then arc away at the opponent. The Orb of Storm now says it creates a lightning infusion remnant if all of its bolts are used up or its duration expires. Which means instead of playing Persistence to get with an overabundance 2 Orb of Storms, I might just have the overabundance on and then the duration of an Orb of Storm is 5 seconds. Summon 2, start zapping away, they deplete, I pick up the remnants, 2 new Orb of Storms, start zapping away for way more damage because I picked up the 2 lightning infusion remnants. Sounds pretty good to me. Because of this combo, they actually buffed up the duration slightly, which has to now be up for 6 seconds instead of 5 seconds with the overabundance. But wait, there's more. Arc also deals 386 damage at gem level 20 instead of 277. And with more quality, it now chains additional times. Why is the chaining additional times so interesting? Well, if it is a projectile skill, then it will be able to actually pierce enemies, because it can't pierce right now. And it should be able to fork. Forking means if a skill hits an enemy, it splits into 2. If it did not pierce, meaning more shebang bang. And also, it could ricochet off terrain. Projectiles from supported skills have a 40% chance to chain an additional time from terrain. Because usually you would throw your arc at a boss, at a single target, and since it then doesn't chain anywhere, it's just that one arc without the cool chaining. But if arc can then fork and then ricochet from terrain or from your ice walls that you might be putting up around the opponent, that should lead to vastly more damage, plus the lightning infusions and your Orb of Storms and all that stuff anyways. Now another intriguing thing about it being a projectile is that Flamewall finally works with it, which would already give us bonus fire damage on our arc. But not only that, because Flamewall can now consume a lightning infusion to grant additional lightning damage to projectile that pass through it, as well as fire damage. Very nice. Orb of Storms giving us then a lightning infused Flamewall to give us even more damage on the arc. You notice, things are going crazy. And to boost things further, we get Mana Tempest. Empowered spells gain 60% of damage as lightning damage, and empowered spells split to 2 additional targets. Plus then the bonus chaining. On top, they buffed our beautiful Archmage, now has non-channeling spells gain 4% of damage as extra lightning damage for each 100 maximum mana, and that used to be a 3%. Thank you very much. All of this we could now slam into the Stormweaver, for example, because Stormweaver is replacing the Rain Dancer node, which currently gives us a 150% cooldown recovery rate. And instead of the cooldown recovery rate, it says +1 limit to elemental spells. Ergo, I could put down 3 Orb of Storms instead of 2 Orb of Storms with the overabundance, and probably use some kind of spell echo so I don't have to go for triple cast Orb of Storms, so I have my cast on crit go for Orb of Storms. And mentioning cast on crit here, they reworked Cold Snap. It is now Snap and can be used on any frozen, shocked, or ignited enemy. We will shock and ignite with that Flame Wall too, causing an explosion of the corresponding damage type and creating a remnant of the corresponding type from enemies. If I shock the enemy, if I snap the enemy, they'll explode, lightning, and leave behind a lightning infusion remnant. This explosion can chain react to a limited extent from enemies hit that are affected by the same ailment. And since my arc is a chain lightning, it shocks also more than just one person plus the Orb of Storms. And with quality, you can spawn an additional remnant. Very interesting. And also intriguing that it doesn't say it consumes the shock, ignite, or freeze. I would assume that it does consume it, but it doesn't state here. Which means we could take our arc, which currently has a 51.7% crit chance, take then cast on crit to put the new snap on, laser away at the opponent with the Orb of Storms, get them shocked, boom, have the snap go off to consume or not consume the shock, to drop us the lightning remnants, to empower our flame wall, to empower our arc for even more damage. Now we said this works on a Stormweaver with that bonus to elements, and they also tinker with the Arcane Surge, and on top you would have the double shock instead of one shock. And the double shock is quite interesting because we could play Lightning Conduit. You call down lightning to hit all enemies in a cone in front of you. Quite powerful. But what is really powerful about the Lightning Conduit would be the new quality option. Quality now provides 5% more damage with hits per 5% shock effect on the enemy, instead of 20% chance on consuming a shock on an enemy to reapply it. The Lightning Conduit does not consume the shock anymore, has a 6-second cooldown, but can essentially be used as a super nuke as it also does twice the damage at this point. This is going to have us arc away at the opponent, and then I guess look for all the shock magnitude nodes available and blast a boss away with that Lightning Conduit on top. Question would obviously be if it's for the amount of shocks someone has, and if I apply 2 shocks and then increase the magnitude, and he has like 2 60% shocks, is that then 120% shock that we're for each 5% doing bonus damage? An alternative would be the new and enhanced Bloodmage, going for that bonus critical hit chance on spells, because the base critical hit chance is 9%, now it's 15%, and then to stack up your critical strike damage bonus to the moon. Issue is that for the one you have to play the Witch, and for the other you have to play the Sword. So you gotta make a decision there if you would like to start this with Witch or with a Stormweaver. I'm a bit torn myself. I'm tending currently more towards the Bloodmage, as I really like that bonus critical strike base chance. Right now, this is a Stormweaver, and we played her to 34, just dabbling and seeing how well Arc feels. And it was relatively easy to get this at 51.7% with the inevitable critical, then it's only 37.3%, and also the pinpoint critical. But that's with a 9% base critical strike chance. If it was 15 base critical strike chance, would be sitting at way higher values already, just absolutely zip-zapping the enemies into pieces. And obviously I can't play all these crit shebang bangs, as I want to play some scattershot and other stuff and maybe chance to shock, so we actually get the shock on very good that can then use the Lightning Conduit. On top, we will be helped by the Frostbomb. Since this one has now a cooldown of 6 seconds, previously 3.5, has a 4-second detonation time instead of 3, but it chills enemies as though dealing 300% more damage and applies elemental exposure instead of cold exposure. Yes, it initially applies 20% elemental exposure and 2% per pulse, plus even more elemental exposure with quality. Got a boss in front of you? Frostbomb him, flame wall up, double orb of storms, blast away with your arcs, and we could use the brand new curse that's not conductivity anymore. Flammability, conductivity, and hypothermia have been combined into a single gem, Elemental Weakness. Yep, I'll do the cold damage together with a bonus fire damage into the lightning damage with even more lightning damage, and my conductivity, aka Elemental Resistance Curse, boosts all of this. We will basically be able to live the whole lightning fantasy again. What do you say, ladies and gentlemen? Does this sound interesting to you? Does this sound intriguing? It's going to be my second or third starter this season. You're going to see what I'm going to play first. That's the Warrior. And afterwards, maybe the Mercenary. Enjoy. Have a great day.